During my wedding reception, my brother started crying at his table. He said he'd never find someone like this. Within minutes, my entire family was around him. My mom left the head table. My dad put his arm around him. I stood there watching my own wedding become his therapy session. No one looked back. My name's Jacob. I'm 32, and I need to tell you about the night my wedding stopped being my wedding. I know that sounds dramatic, and trust me, I wish I was exaggerating. But I stood there in a rented tuxedo that cost me $400, watching my entire family migrate across a banquet hall like they were responding to some kind of emotional bat signal, and not a single one of them looked back at me. Not my mom, not my dad, not my aunts, my uncles, my cousins. Nobody. And the worst part is, I wasn't even surprised. That's the part that haunts me the most. I wasn't shocked. I was just tired. Let me back up. I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, the older of two boys. My younger brother's name is Caleb. He's 29 now, and if you asked anyone in my family to describe him, they'd probably say something like sensitive or going through a lot or just needs a little extra love. If you asked me to describe him, I'd say he's a guy who figured out at age 12 that if he cried loud enough, every adult in the room would drop what they were doing to make him feel better. And I'd say that without an ounce of bitterness, except that would be a lie, because I've got plenty of bitterness. I've just gotten really good at folding it up and sticking it in a drawer somewhere. Caleb wasn't a bad kid. I want to be clear about that. He wasn't cruel or manipulative in the way people usually mean when they say those words. He was just fragile. Or at least, that's the story everyone told. He struggled in school, not because he wasn't smart, but because he didn't handle pressure well. He had a hard time making friends. He went through a rough patch in high school where he barely left his room for a semester. My parents, especially my mom, treated him like he was made of something that could shatter if you looked at it wrong. And me? I was the easy one. That was my role. Jacob's fine. Jacob can handle it. Jacob doesn't need us to sit with him for 3 hours because he got a B- on a history test. I got good grades, played baseball, had a decent group of friends, and never caused any problems. And because I never caused problems, nobody ever really paid attention to whether I had any. Here's a small example. When I was 16, I made the varsity baseball team as a sophomore. That was a big deal at our school. I came home buzzing, told my parents at dinner. My dad said, "That's great, bud," and went back to eating. My mom said congratulations, and then pivoted to asking Caleb how his therapy appointment went that afternoon. I sat there with my fork in my hand, waiting for someone to ask me about tryouts, about who else made the team, about anything. Nobody did. I cleared my plate, went to my room, and stared at the ceiling for an hour. I was 16. I didn't have the vocabulary yet to explain why that hurt so much. I just knew it did. This pattern repeated for the next 15 years. Every milestone I hit was acknowledged with the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list. Every struggle Caleb had was treated like a 5-alarm fire. When I graduated college with honors, my parents came to the ceremony but spent half the dinner afterward on the phone with Caleb, who was having a panic attack about a job interview. When I got promoted to project manager at 27, my mom said, "Oh, that's wonderful, honey," and then asked if I could talk to Caleb because he'd just broken up with his girlfriend and wouldn't answer her calls. When I bought my first house at 29, my dad helped me move in for about 2 hours before he got a text from Caleb and left to go sit with him at his apartment because he was spiraling about something I never got the full story on. I'm not saying Caleb didn't have real problems. He did. He dealt with anxiety, depression, the whole package. I have empathy for that. But at some point, empathy runs out when it only flows in one direction. At some point, you start to realize that your family has a limited supply of emotional bandwidth, and all of it is allocated to one person, and that person isn't you. Then I met Brooke. Brooke is the kind of person who makes you wonder what you were doing with your life before she showed up. She's an occupational therapist. She's got this laugh that sounds like it should be bottled and sold as medicine. And she's the first person who ever made me feel like I wasn't invisible. We met at a friend's cookout, bonded over our mutual hatred of potato salad that has raisins in it. And within 3 months, I knew I was going to marry her. Within 6 months, she knew everything about my family, about Caleb, about the invisible shelf I'd been sitting on my whole life. And she didn't try to fix it or tell me I was overreacting. She just said, "That's not okay, Jacob. You know that, right?" I proposed on a Saturday in October at the botanical garden where we'd had our third date. She cried. I cried. It was perfect. When I called my parents to tell them, my mom was happy, genuinely happy. She said all the right things. But within 5 minutes, the conversation shifted to Caleb. He'd just been let go from another job, his third in 2 years, and my mom wanted to know if maybe I could help him with his resume. On the phone call where I told my mother I was engaged, I looked at Brooke across the living room, and she just gave me this small, sad smile. She already understood. The wedding planning was fine, mostly. My parents contributed a little money, not a ton, but enough to cover the flowers and part of the catering. Brooke's parents covered the venue, which was a renovated barn outside of Asheville. Beautiful place. We kept things tasteful but not extravagant. About 130 guests. Brooke handled most of the details because she's terrifyingly organized, and I handled the groomsmen, the music, and trying to keep my family from turning every planning conversation into a discussion about Caleb's latest crisis. Because there was always a crisis. In the 8 months between the engagement and the wedding, Caleb went through another breakup, lost his apartment lease, moved in with my parents temporarily, started and quit his certification program, and had what my mom described as a really dark week in March that she wouldn't elaborate on, but that resulted in my dad driving 4 hours round trip to be with him on a Wednesday night. Every time I called home to talk about seating charts or rehearsal dinner plans, the conversation got hijacked. Every single time, I asked Caleb to be my best man. I want you to know that. Despite everything, I asked him because he's my brother and I love him, and part of me still believed that this one day, this one event, could be the thing that brought us together. He said yes. He seemed genuinely excited. He even wrote a speech. I never got to hear it. The wedding day started beautifully. Asheville in June is something else. The ceremony was at 4 in the afternoon, golden light coming through the barn doors, Brooke walking toward me in this dress that made me forget how to breathe. I cried when I saw her. My groomsmen gave me a hard time about it later, which is exactly what groomsmen are for. The vows were personal. The officiant was a friend of Brooke's family, funny and warm. It was everything I'd ever wanted. The reception kicked off around 6. Dinner, toasts, first dance. Everything was going according to plan. Brooke and I were making the rounds, thanking guests, taking photos. I was the happiest I'd ever been in my life. And I remember thinking, just for a second, maybe today is the day my family finally sees me. Maybe today is different. It was around 7:30 when it started. The DJ had just played our second dance, a slow one Brooke picked because it was the song playing in the car on our first road trip together. We were heading back to the head table, laughing about something my college buddy Travis had said during his toast, when I noticed the shift. It was subtle at first, a few heads turning toward the back corner of the reception hall. Then a murmur, the way a room changes when something happens that isn't on the program. I looked over and saw Caleb sitting at his table, one of the round ones near the windows. His head was down, his shoulders were shaking, and my cousin Paige was crouched next to him with her hand on his arm. Look, I want to be fair here. I don't know exactly what triggered it. Maybe the emotion of the day got to him. Maybe seeing me up there, happy and settled, reminded him of everything he didn't have. I'm not heartless. I understand that other people's pain doesn't run on a schedule. But what happened next is something I will never forget for as long as I live. My mom noticed. Of course she did. She has a sixth sense for Caleb's distress, like a radar dish that only picks up one frequency. She was sitting at the head table, right next to my dad, maybe 10 feet from me. I watched her face change. She went from smiling and clapping along to the music to this tight, worried expression I've seen 1,000 times. She stood up, said something to my dad I couldn't hear, and walked across the reception hall toward Caleb's table. She didn't look at me. She didn't say, "Excuse me, Jacob, I'll be right back." She just got up and left the head table at my wedding reception to go comfort my brother. My dad followed about 30 seconds later. Same thing. No acknowledgement. No glance in my direction. Just stood up and walked over. Then my Aunt Diane. Then my Uncle Greg. Then 3 of my cousins. Within maybe 10 minutes, there was a cluster of 8 or 9 people around Caleb's table, and the head table was half empty. I stood there holding a glass of champagne that suddenly felt like it weighed 40 pounds. Brooke squeezed my hand. She didn't say anything at first. She didn't have to. We both just stood there and watched it happen. From across the room, I could hear fragments. My mom's voice, soft and soothing. My dad saying, hey, it's okay." Someone, I think it was Paige, saying, "You're going to find someone, Caleb, you will." And Caleb, between sobs, saying, I just don't think I'll ever have this. I'm never going to have what Jacob has. I'm always going to be alone. And here's the thing. I believe he meant it. I believe that in that moment, Caleb was genuinely hurting. I'm not questioning the authenticity of his pain. What I'm questioning is the response. What I'm questioning is why every single person in my family decided that his pain, at that exact moment, in that exact setting, was more important than my joy. The DJ kept playing. Brooke's family, her parents, her sister Claire, her friends, they were all still dancing, still celebrating, occasionally shooting confused looks toward the huddle in the corner. Brooke's mom came over to us at one point and said, "Is everything okay?" And I said, "Yeah, Caleb's just having a tough moment." I said it like it was nothing, like I'd been trained to say it. Because I had been. After about 20 minutes, I walked over. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I thought someone would see me coming and snap out of it. Maybe I thought my dad would look up and say, "Sorry, son, we'll be right back." Instead, I walked up to the circle of my own family members at my own wedding, and I had to physically tap my mother on the shoulder to get her attention. She turned around, and the look on her face was almost annoyed. Not at Caleb. At me, like I was interrupting something important. "Mom," I said, "can I talk to you for a second?" "Jacob, not right now," she said. "Your brother is really struggling." I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break. Crack. Like a windshield that gets hit by a rock on the highway. The damage is done, but the whole thing hasn't fallen apart yet. "Mom, it's my wedding," I said. I kept my voice low. I wasn't going to cause a scene. I wasn't going to be the villain in my own story. "Can someone else sit with him for a few minutes? I just want my parents at the head table." She gave me this look. This look I'd been getting my entire life. The look that said, "You're the strong one. You can handle this." "He can't." "Jacob, he's your brother," she said. "He's having a really hard time. Just give us a few minutes." A few minutes turned into 45. By the time my parents came back to the head table, we'd already cut the cake. They missed it. My mom missed the cake cutting at my wedding because she was holding Caleb's hand and telling him he was going to be okay. My dad missed it because he was rubbing circles on Caleb's back like he was 9 years old again. Brooke's dad, Patrick, gave the father of the bride toast. It was beautiful, heartfelt. He talked about how the first time he met me, I showed up with flowers for Brooke and a six-pack for him, and he knew right then I was the one. People laughed. People cried. It was everything a toast should be. Caleb was supposed to give the best man speech after that. He didn't. He was still at his table, surrounded by my family, being consoled like he was the one who'd lost something that night. My friend Travis stepped in and gave an impromptu speech that was mostly jokes about our college days, and it was great, but it wasn't the same. The best man slot just evaporated, and nobody in my family acknowledged it. I danced with my mom at 8:15. The mother-son dance. She smiled. She held my hand. But her eyes kept drifting over my shoulder, toward Caleb's table, the entire time. I could feel it. Every turn, every step, she was looking past me, looking at him, on the one dance that was supposed to be ours. After the song ended, she squeezed my hand and said, "I'm so proud of you, Jacob." And then she walked straight back to Caleb. I went to the bar, ordered a whiskey. Brooke found me there 5 minutes later and put her hand on my back. We didn't speak for a long time. Just stood there side by side, watching the dance floor fill up with her family and our friends, while my family stayed clustered in the corner like a support group that accidentally booked the wrong venue. At one point, my dad came over. He clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Heck of a wedding, son. Really beautiful." Then he said, "Hey, listen, your brother's in a rough spot tonight. I think your mom and I might take him back to the hotel a little early. He shouldn't be alone." It was 9:30. The reception was supposed to go until 11. My parents were leaving my wedding early to escort my brother back to his hotel room because he was sad about being single. At my wedding, where I had just married the love of my life. My dad asked me if that was okay, and I said yes, because that's what I always say. They left at 9:45. My mom hugged me, told me she loved me, kissed Brooke on the cheek, and walked out the door with her arm around Caleb. My dad shook my hand, said congratulations again, and followed them out. 3 of my aunts and uncles went with them. The rest of the night was actually wonderful. Once my family was gone, the weight lifted. Brooke's people took over the dance floor. Travis got the whole crowd doing some ridiculous line dance. Claire gave an improvised toast that had everyone in stitches. Brooke and I danced until our feet hurt, and then danced some more. It was joyful. It was free. It was everything the whole night should have been. But when we got back to the hotel room at midnight, I sat on the edge of the bed in my tuxedo, and I didn't move for a long time. Brooke sat next to me. She didn't push. She just waited. They left, I finally said. They left my wedding for him. Brooke put her head on my shoulder. I know. I'm done, I said. And I meant it in a way I'd never meant anything before. Not done with Caleb. Not done with my parents. Done pretending that this was something I could keep absorbing. Done being the one who's always fine. Done waiting at the head table for people who were never going to turn around. The week after the wedding was supposed to be our honeymoon. Brooke and I went to the Outer Banks for 10 days, a little beach cottage her parents owned that sat right on the dunes. It was perfect. It should have been nothing but sunburns and seafood and falling asleep to the sound of waves. And honestly, most of it was. But underneath everything, I was carrying this heaviness I couldn't quite name. I didn't call my parents. They didn't call me either. Not on the first day. Not on the third. On day 5, my mom sent a text that said, "Hope you two are having a beautiful time. Caleb is doing much better. Love you." I read it sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee and felt my jaw tighten. Even in a text about my honeymoon, Caleb was in the middle of the sentence. Brooke saw my face and said, "What did she say?" I showed her. She read it, set down her mug, and said, "When we get home, we need to talk about boundaries. Real ones. Not the kind you set, and then let them walk over." She was right. She was always right. But boundaries are easier to talk about on a porch in the Outer Banks than they are to enforce when you're standing in your mother's kitchen and she's looking at you like you just told her you're moving to another planet. We got home on a Thursday. I went back to work on Monday. I'm a project manager for a construction firm in Charlotte, which is about 3 hours from Raleigh where my parents live. The distance helped. It gave me room to breathe. But my mom started calling more after the honeymoon, not to check on me, but to give me updates on Caleb. He was thinking about going back to school. He was seeing a new therapist. He was considering moving to a different city. Every call was a Caleb bulletin, and every call ended with some version of, "You should reach out to him, Jacob. He looks up to you." 3 weeks after the wedding, I finally called her back and said what I'd been rehearsing in my head for days. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something, and I need you to actually listen." There was a pause. "Okay, honey, what's going on? What happened at my wedding wasn't okay." Another pause. Longer this time. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you and Dad left the head table during my reception to go sit with Caleb for almost an hour. You missed the cake cutting. You missed his best man toast because he never gave it. You left early. You took half the family with you. On my wedding night." She was quiet for a few seconds, and then she said something that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. She said, "Jacob, your brother was in a really fragile place that night. I'm sorry if you felt overlooked, but we had to prioritize who needed us most." Who needed us most? At my wedding. On the one day in 32 years that was supposed to be about me. She said that. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "Okay, Mom. I hear you." And I hung up. Brooke was standing in the kitchen doorway. She'd heard the whole thing. She didn't say "I told you so." She just walked over and hugged me. That was the beginning of what I think of as the quiet separation. I didn't cut my parents off dramatically. I didn't send a long letter or make a big announcement. I just stopped being available. I stopped picking up every call. I stopped driving to Raleigh for Sunday dinners. I stopped asking about Caleb. And slowly, carefully, I started building a life that didn't revolve around being the family member who never needed anything. Brooke was the foundation of that. She didn't just support me through it. She helped me see the patterns I'd been blind to for years. She'd gently point things out. "You know, your mom called 3 times this week, and every call was about Caleb." Or, "Your dad texted asking if you could help Caleb with his car, but he never asked how your presentation went." She wasn't trying to poison me against my family. She was trying to help me see what I'd been normalizing since I was a kid. I started seeing a therapist named Owen in August. First time I'd ever talked to a professional about any of this. Owen was in his 50s, calm, direct, no nonsense. First session, I told him the wedding story. He let me finish, then he leaned forward and said, "Jacob, have you ever considered that you've been grieving your parents for a long time, even though they're still alive?" That one sentence hit me like a freight train. Because he was right. I'd been mourning the parents I wanted, the ones who showed up, who paid attention, who saw me, for decades. I just never recognized it as grief because the people I was grieving were still sitting across from me at Thanksgiving. Owen helped me understand something else too. He said that families often assign roles early on, and once those roles are set, they're almost impossible to change from the inside. I was the capable one. Caleb was the fragile one. And as long as those labels stayed in place, my parents would always run to him first, not because they loved me less, but because they genuinely believed I didn't need them. The cruelest part was that they thought they were doing the right thing. Through the fall and into winter, things shifted. I threw myself into work and landed a lead role on a major commercial project downtown, a mixed-use development that was the biggest thing our firm had taken on in years. My boss, a guy named Grant who'd been mentoring me since I started, told me he was grooming me for a director position. I started putting in the hours, not to escape, but because I finally had the mental space to focus on something I actually cared about. Brooke and I settled into married life. We painted the guest room. We adopted a dog named Biscuit, a three-legged mutt who had absolutely no idea he was missing a leg and lived his life accordingly. We hosted dinner parties with friends. We built routines. For the first time in my life, I had a home that felt like mine, not a place I was just passing through on my way to fix someone else's problem. My parents noticed the distance eventually. Around October, my dad called and said, "Haven't seen you in a while, son. Everything okay?" I said, "Yeah, just busy with work." He accepted that. My mom was less accepting. She started texting more, then less, then more again, always about Caleb, always with the subtext of "Why aren't you more involved?" I responded when I felt like it. Sometimes that was the same day. Sometimes it was 3 days later. I was learning something revolutionary. I was allowed to not be available. By December, Caleb himself reached out. He sent me a text that said, "Hey bro, sorry I was a mess at your wedding. Hope you and Brooke are doing good." It was short. It was casual. It didn't acknowledge what his breakdown had actually cost me. But it was something. I texted back, "Thanks man. We're doing great. Hope you're hanging in there." And I left it at that. I wasn't ready for more. I didn't know if I ever would be. Christmas was the first real test. Brooke and I drove to Raleigh, spent 2 days at my parents' house. Caleb was there, quieter than usual. My mom made her usual production of the holiday. Big dinner, too many side dishes, the works. I watched the dynamic play out in real time, now with Owen's framework in my head. Every conversation eventually curved back to Caleb. How was his new job going? Was he still seeing that girl? Did he like his new apartment? I answered questions about myself in 2 sentences, and nobody followed up. But this time, I wasn't hurt. I was observing. I was taking notes. And when Brooke and I drove home on the 26th, I felt something I hadn't expected: clarity. I finally understood that my family wasn't going to change. Not because they were bad people, but because the system was too old, too deep, too comfortable. And if the system wasn't going to change, then I was going to change my relationship to it. By February, I'd been promoted. Director of Project Management at 32. Grant shook my hand and said, "You've earned this 10 times over." My team threw me a little celebration in the conference room. Brooke met me at our favorite restaurant that night, and we toasted with the good wine. I called my parents to share the news. My mom said congratulations. Then she said, "Oh, speaking of work, Caleb just got offered a position at a marketing firm. Isn't that wonderful?" Same phone call, same pivot, same old pattern. But this time I laughed. Not bitterly. Just the kind of laugh that comes when you finally stop expecting something different from people who've shown you exactly who they are. The thing about standing up for yourself is that it never happens at the moment you plan it. You can rehearse conversations in the shower 100 times, script the perfect monologue while driving to work, imagine the exact look on their face when you finally say the thing you've been holding in for years. But the real moment, the one that actually matters, it sneaks up on you wearing a disguise you never expected. Mine showed up in April, about 10 months after the wedding, wearing the disguise of my parents' 35th wedding anniversary. My mom called me in the middle of March to tell me she and my dad were planning a big party. They wanted to do it at the family lake house outside of Raleigh, a property my grandparents had left to my parents years ago. She said she wanted both her boys there. She said it would mean the world to her. She said it would be a chance for the whole family to come together and celebrate something good. The irony of that last part was apparently lost on her. I told her I'd be there. Brooke and I both would. I said it calmly, and I meant it. Because somewhere between the therapy sessions and the promotion and the quiet rebuilding of my entire inner world, I'd landed on a decision. I wasn't going to blow up at my parents. I wasn't going to send a scorched earth text or stage some dramatic confrontation in a parking lot. I was going to wait for the right moment, and when it came, I was going to say exactly what I needed to say, clearly and without apology, and then I was going to let the chips fall. Owen helped me prepare. Over several sessions in March and early April, we worked through what I wanted to communicate, not in anger, but in truth. He said something that stuck with me. He said, "The goal isn't to punish them, Jacob. The goal is to be seen. And if they can't see you after you've spoken your truth, then at least you'll know the problem isn't your silence anymore." Brooke was my sounding board. We'd sit on the back porch after dinner, biscuits sprawled at our feet, and I'd run through what I wanted to say. She'd push back when I was being too soft, pull me back when I was being too sharp. She helped me find the tone. Not cold, not furious, just honest. The kind of honest that doesn't leave room for someone to say you were being dramatic. There was one night in late March where Brooke looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "You know, even if this doesn't go the way you want, even if they don't hear you, I need you to know that what happened at our wedding was real. You're not making it up. You're not being sensitive. It happened, and it mattered, and I was standing right there." I don't know if she'll ever understand how much I needed to hear that. The anniversary party was set for the third Saturday in April. My mom went all out, rented tables and chairs for the back deck, hired a caterer, strung lights through the trees along the water. She even made a slideshow of photos from their 35 years together. When Brooke and I arrived that afternoon, I have to admit, it looked beautiful. The lake was calm, the weather cooperated, and for a second I almost forgot why I was anxious. Caleb was already there. He was helping my dad set up the bar, which was really just a folding table with a tablecloth and a cooler of drinks underneath. He gave me a hug when I walked in. He seemed good, steady, even. He'd been at the marketing job for a couple months and apparently liked it. He'd started dating someone named Paige, a different Paige than our cousin, and was talking about her with this cautious optimism that I recognized because I used to sound the same way when I talked about Brooke in the early days. For the first couple hours, everything was fine. Extended family arrived. My Aunt Diane brought her famous potato casserole. Uncle Greg told the same fishing story he's been telling since I was 11. The caterer set up a buffet that was way too much food for 40 people, which is the only appropriate amount of food for a Southern family gathering. Brooke charmed everyone as usual. She has this ability to remember every detail anyone has ever told her and bring it up naturally in conversation, which makes people feel like they're the only person in the room. I watched her ask my Aunt Diane about her new garden shed, and Diane's face lit up like Christmas morning. That's just who Brooke is. After dinner, my mom stood up to give a little speech. She talked about how she and my dad had built their life together, how it hadn't always been easy, but how family was the thing that kept them going. She looked at my dad with genuine love. She said she was grateful for her boys, both of them. And then, right on schedule, she started talking about Caleb. Not about me. Not about us. About Caleb. She said something like, "I'm especially proud of Caleb, who's been through so much this past year and is really finding his footing. You inspire me, sweetheart." She was tearing up. Several people at the table were nodding. Caleb looked down at his plate, a little embarrassed but clearly moved. She said nothing about me. Nothing about my promotion. Nothing about Brooke and me building a life together. Nothing about the fact that I'd driven 3 hours to be there. I was simply absent from the speech at my parents' anniversary party. Not mentioned. Not included. Just not there. Brooke reached under the table and put her hand on my knee. I could feel her grip tighten, not in panic, but in solidarity. She was telling me she noticed. She always noticed. I didn't react. Not yet. I clapped when everyone else clapped. I smiled. I refilled my drink. I waited. The party continued into the evening. People moved inside as the sun went down. The slideshow played on a loop on the living room TV. I watched photos of my childhood scroll past, most of them featuring Caleb and my parents, a few with me in the background. There was one from my Little League championship, the only game my dad attended that season. And even in that photo, my dad was looking off to the side, probably at Caleb in the stands. Around 8:30, people started filtering out. The extended family said their goodbyes. My mom was in the kitchen wrapping up leftovers. My dad was on the back deck with Greg, having one last drink. Caleb was in the living room with his girlfriend. And I stood in the hallway between all of them, knowing the moment was here. Brooke found me there. She looked at me, searching my face, and said, "Are you ready?" "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." I'll be right outside. I found my parents in the kitchen. My mom was loading the dishwasher. My dad was leaning against the counter with a bottle of water. They both looked happy. Tired, but happy. I almost felt bad. Almost. Mom. Dad. Can I talk to you both for a minute? My mom straightened up. Sure, honey. What's up? I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear the whole thing before you respond. Can you do that? They looked at each other. The energy in the room shifted. My dad set down his water. My mom closed the dishwasher. They both gave me their full attention, and honestly, even that felt unfamiliar. Okay, my dad said. We're listening. I took a breath. Here we go. At my wedding reception, I said, Caleb started crying at his table. Within 5 minutes, every member of this family was around him. You left the head table, Mom. Dad, you followed. Aunts, uncles, cousins. You all went to him. And no one looked back at me. My mom opened her mouth, but I held up my hand. You said you'd let me finish. She closed it. My dad didn't move. You missed the cake cutting. Caleb never gave his best man speech. You did the mother-son dance with me while looking over my shoulder at him the entire time. And then you left. You left my wedding at 9:45 at night to take Caleb back to his hotel room because he was sad about being single on my wedding night. And when I called you 3 weeks later to tell you how much that hurt, you said, and I am quoting you directly, Mom, you said you had to prioritize who needed you most. My mom's eyes were filling up. My dad's jaw was tight. I have spent my entire life being the easy one, I said. The one who didn't need help. The one who didn't cause problems. The one who could handle it. And I let you believe that because I thought that was what good sons do. I thought if I was strong enough, if I was independent enough, eventually you'd see me. Eventually you'd show up for me the way you show up for Caleb. But you never did. You don't. I pointed at the living room, where the slideshow was still cycling on the TV. Mom, you gave a speech tonight about your family, and you didn't mention me. Not once. You talked about Caleb's growth and Caleb's struggles and how proud you are of Caleb. I drove 3 hours to be here. I got promoted to director 2 months ago. I have a wife who I built a life with. And I was invisible in your speech. Just like I was invisible at my own wedding. Just like I've been invisible my whole life. The kitchen was silent. The faucet dripped. Somewhere in the living room, the slideshow clicked to the next photo. My dad spoke first. Jacob, that's not fair. We love you just as much as we love your brother. I believe that, I said. I really do. But love and attention are not the same thing, Dad. You can love someone and still make them feel like they don't matter. And that's what you've been doing to me for 32 years. My mom was crying now. Not the way she cried for Caleb, which was always accompanied by holding, rocking, soothing words. She was crying quietly, with her hand over her mouth, like she'd just heard something she couldn't unhear. I asked myself something in therapy. I said, can you name a single time when the whole family dropped everything to take care of me? Not congratulate me in passing, but actually be there for me the way you were there for Caleb at my wedding? I couldn't come up with one. My dad rubbed his face with both hands. We didn't know, he said. Jacob, I swear, we didn't know you felt this way. Because I never told you, I said. And that's on me. But it's also because you never asked. You never once asked me if I was okay. Not when I was 16 and made varsity and nobody cared. Not when I graduated college and you spent dinner on the phone with Caleb. Not when I bought a house and you left after 2 hours because Caleb texted. You never asked because you assumed I was fine. And I let you assume that because I was terrified that if I wasn't fine, you still wouldn't come. That one landed. I could see it hit both of them. My mom actually flinched. My dad looked at the floor. I'm not saying this to punish you, I said, and I meant it. I'm not trying to ruin your anniversary or make you feel like bad parents. I'm saying this because I can't carry it anymore. The weight of being invisible to the people who are supposed to see you most, it breaks you eventually. And I refuse to be broken by this. I took a breath. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. I thought I'd be a wreck by this point, but I wasn't. I was calm in a way I'd never been before, like something heavy had finally been set down. I love Caleb, I said. He's my brother. And I understand that he struggled, and I have compassion for that. But his pain does not get to eclipse my entire existence. Not anymore. My mom reached for me. Jacob, please. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I thought you were okay. You always seemed so okay. Because that was my job, I said. That was the role I was assigned. The easy one. The one who doesn't need anything. But I do need things, Mom. I needed you at my wedding. I needed you to stay. I needed one night, One single night, where I was the priority. And I didn't get it. My dad stood up straight. He crossed the kitchen and put both hands on my shoulders. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he said, "You're right. We failed you. I failed you." That was the first time my father had ever said those words to me. I felt something unlock in my chest, something that had been bolted shut for so long I'd forgotten it was there. My mom came over too. She didn't try to explain or justify. She just said, "I'm sorry, Jacob. I am so sorry." And for the first time, her apology wasn't a bridge to talking about Caleb. It was just for me. We stood there in the kitchen for a long time. Nobody said anything profound. My mom cried. My dad held my shoulder. I didn't cry, but I came close. Brooke was out on the porch, and I could see her through the window, sitting on the steps with Biscuit, watching the stars. She looked peaceful. She looked like home. There's something I need to tell you, because this isn't one of those stories where everyone hugs and everything is magically fixed. That night was the beginning of a process, not the end of one. Caleb found out a few days later. My mom told him. He called me the following week, upset but not angry. He said, "I didn't ask them to come over to me at your wedding, Jacob. I didn't want that." "I know," I said, "but you didn't stop it either." He was quiet. Then he said, "You're right. I should have told them to go back." "I'm sorry." "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. It took months. Real change always does. My parents started calling just to ask about me. My mom started catching herself mid-pivot and would say, "Sorry, I'm doing it again, aren't I?" My dad drove down to Charlotte one weekend, no occasion, just to have lunch and see the new office. He said, "Tell me about the project you're running." All of it. And he listened. For the first time in my life. Caleb and I are closer than we've been in years. He sent me a text on my anniversary that said, "Happy 1 year to you and Brooke. I hope I get to give that best man speech someday. Maybe at your vow renewal." I laughed out loud when I read it. It's been a little over a year since the wedding now. Brooke and I just found out she's pregnant. A girl. When I called my parents to tell them, my mom screamed so loud my dad thought something was wrong. She asked me 100 questions. She didn't mention Caleb once during the entire call. 45 minutes of just me and my mom, talking about my life, my family, my future. When we hung up, I sat on the couch, and for the first time in 32 years, I didn't feel invisible. I know some of you reading this might think I should have said something sooner. And you're probably right. I should have. But the thing about being the easy one is that you get so good at not needing things that you forget you're allowed to need them. You build this whole identity around being fine. And then one day you're standing at your own wedding watching your family walk away from you. And you realize that fine isn't a feeling. It's a cage. I'm out of the cage now. My daughter's due in November. My parents offered to come help for the first 2 weeks. My mom specifically said, and I mean help with the baby, not give you updates about Caleb. She laughed when she said it. I did too. Some nights, I still think about that reception. The cluster of my family around Caleb's table, the empty chairs at the head table, the dance floor that felt like someone else's party. But the image doesn't sting the way it used to. Because now, when I look at that memory, I don't see the moment my family forgot about me. I see the moment I decided to stop forgetting about myself. And that's a trade I'd make every single time.